Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my Final Fantasy series perspective. Yeah, see here, alright. So, I decided to do this because I had recently beaten Final Fantasy XVI, and I went back, and this had been sitting in my backlog for a while. I was pretty much at the end, but like the last dungeon was a piece of shit. Final Fantasy IV on the DS. And I like the Final Fantasy series. Now granted, I have a different kind of way of how I've kind of done this because I didn't play the kind of major big ones on the PlayStation, like 7, 8, 9, and then 10 I rented from Hollywood Video back in the day on PlayStation 2, and I got stuck on this like ice lake, and I was like, and I really wasn't feeling it. And then it's been vastly longer, and then I got pretty much Final Fantasy 15 for my birthday, and that really kind of connected me with the series because I connected with the core characters of Noctis, Gladiolus, Ignis, Prompto, and they're pretty much bachelor journey to get Noctis married before everything kind of spins and everything, which is definitely a different kind of one, because you'd probably be like, well, you're more into turn-based JRPGs. And I'm like, yeah, that's a lot of my bread and butter for a lot of stuff. And it took me a while to kind of get to Final Fantasy because of it mainly being on PlayStation and then eventually getting to Xbox and everything. But the series has become important to me enough that I've rebought certain ones so I can do replays on Steam for computer and all that. So I then, after doing 16, decided to go back and play some of these ones through PlayStation because I got the PlayStation 4 Pro, and I kind of went through them and did a few of them. I'm like, okay. And I played, of course, Final Fantasy Type 0. That's kind of in my ranking list here. So let's kind of hit on how I kind of rank these and then kind of going into each one. Now, granted, Type 0 is already at the bottom of my list because of it is just, I've already done that kind of stuff. So my first one that I go for, that I put on the top of my list, is Final Fantasy IX. Then I go to 15, 16, 7, 12, 10 is my base of like, where I would essentially set a kind of middle ground, where I don't hate it, but I don't love it. It's that kind of neutral one where I'm like, Final Fantasy game. Then 4, because of the fucking dungeon. Even though I'm interested in the story and characters, it went fuckity-doo-dah. And then 8 and Type 0. So 9 I really liked because of how the characters in the world kind of worked out. I liked Zidane, his whole plan with the acting troupe, Princess Garnet / Dagger, and trying to understand the world of Final Fantasy IX, getting involved with Vivi and the Black Mages, understanding Kuja and how his creation of essentially being this kind of angel of death for Garland, and all these other kind of weird, kind of crazy things, and Zidane supposing to be his successor, and to be better off, and Kuja being built for a finite lifespan, and him ranting and railing against that kind of shit, and seeing how all the characters interact, and Zidane kind of being your thief, Garnet with their kind of magic for kind of healing and all that. Let's see. Who is it? Nope. There's just a lot of cool characters and everything in there, man. And then, of course, the Eidolons. Of course, you've got, let's see, Steiner, yeah. Freya, Quina, Aiko, Amarant. Amarant is pretty much at the end, and it's kind of like you really don't get too much for him. And of course, you got all the stuff with crystals and all that. And I do like how that kind of narrative evolves throughout all the different kind of series of what kind of goes on. This having a life crystal and everything, and Kuja trying to like destroy it at the end before you fight the end god Necron and be like, fuck you, buddy. Because Kuja towards the end, once he starts learning like his purpose and everything, he's like, I don't want the world to exist after me. Fuck that noise. It's like, god damn, the nihilistic pettiness of that shit. Like, it's engrossing to go through the turn-based system and understand kind of what's going on. Ramping yourself up, leveling up, getting better kind of weapons and everything. And even though that's pretty much the kind of whole basic kind of flow of these games, they're done and executed in various different kind of manners, and Final Fantasy IX really hit for me. And I liked Zidane as a protagonist, what he kind of had to deal with, and then the rest of his party coming to his aid after he learns all this kind of stuff, and him at the end trying to save Kuja from everything, and eventually getting back to his friends and loved ones, which was really kind of nice. I really enjoy how it kind of goes through and has its different kind of themes of what does it mean to be and exist and find your purpose when those that came before you and those that created you are fucking dickholes and go fuck off because of what they're kind of doing, and seeing Kuja pretty much trying to destroy the world, and then like even amping up further on, utilizing Garnet's mother, Queen Brane, to do horrible things to the world and make her just be an asshole, and how the kind of Eidolon system works for him. Let me see here. Like, we've got the summoners that can summon those, and like they went after those summoners because they could summon these Eidolons. We've got Mist stimulating bloody fighting instincts and everything. But like all the intrigue, finding all the different kind of things going on. And we find out that Garnet was a summoner and that she was adopted by Brane as a child. It just introduces all these different kind of things. We've got this tree and everything that's like linked up with like the souls and everything, and all these different kind of like afterlife things. It's like, what the fuck's going on here? But it was a really compelling story to see these characters go through all this different kind of shit, and the systems worked out pretty well. I didn't feel really constrained. Now granted, I was playing it as a remastered version, so I could like do no, not auto fight, but I could speed through the fighting, which is a godsend, especially in older RPGs, where it's like, okay, sometimes it takes a little bit, so let's kind of speed this up to see where this kind of goes. Let's see here. So, let us now go to Final Fantasy XV. This one is definitely a change-up. Throughout most of this series, up until this point, we had been dealing with certain kind of things that have been mainly turn-based. Granted, 12 did some kind of differences as well. I did not play 13 and its trilogy, but I don't really plan to. Earlier kind of Final Fantasies, like 1 through 6, barring 4, I might at some point, but we'll have to kind of see. 15 is where we started having, well, not started having, but it mainly took more inspiration from Kingdom Hearts and went more action route. So you would control Noctis and give kind of orders to the rest of his party as you're kind of going through and fighting. This one dealing with Magitech and being more kind of a modern kind of interpretation with certain kind of vehicles. Though granted, 7 and 8 do also have modern things in them as well, but this you actually like go around, drive a car, go more in an open world. They had a Mantoise fight. Oh my god, if that was not just a not bullets. Yes, kind of bullet sponge, sword sponge that took forever to fight just because it's like, hey, this is a Mantoise. Let's give it a fuck ton of health. That would took me forever. Pardon me, excuse me, to fucking go through, but I liked seeing what they kind of had to do on their journeys of just being bros, sitting at campfires, making meals that had stat increases and whatnot, going and fishing, learning more about Gladiolus, Ignis, and Prompto, and what Noctis wants to do, and his love for Lunafreya, and we see that Arden wants to take down the world because of how he's been treated, and everything with this Star Scourge. Now granted, there were DLCs that gave us more insight into each of these characters. Even though I have this high up on my ranking, that does not mean I do that I overlooked the problems that this had. This, for some fucking reason, was pretty much unfinished towards the end, and just jacked up and be like, okay, here's Noctis and the rest of them fighting Arden and all that, and dealing with the Star Scourge as they pretty much die, but get their own kind of happy ending towards the end. Let me see here. Now, the Arden DLC was interesting to kind of fuck around with them a little bit, but it's more like too little too late at that point because, okay, it's DLC, we've kind of already gone through all this stuff. We should be doing other things at this point. And of course, we've gotten the Star Scourge to plunge Eos into Eternal Night. And that the humans had turned on the Astrals. But yet they were supposed to protect Eos, but Ifrit's like, you fuckers! And then, of course, Bahamut killed him, and that's have to have caused the spread of the Star Scourge across the planet. Let's see here. And of course, he used the Ring of Lucy to purge the Star Scourge, and then in the afterlife, they take on Arden, and that they have peace in the afterlife. It's like, alright, that's a nice little thing. It did get kind of weird, but, like, I like seeing the different kind of aspects, driving around, doing the typical kind of Final Fantasy maiden stays, and just, I love the connections with the characters, like, just Gladiolus kind of being the muscle, Prompto being the kind of funny one, Ignis being the kind of serious one, and Noctis being that kind of one that kind of holds them together. And it's kind of cool to kind of like extrapolate that and see that out in your own kind of friends group or whatnot. That's what really connected me with it, while also having a pretty kind of fun battle system. Even though I'm kind of more partial to the turn-based ones, I think that this had enough interesting kind of use cases with the action combat, more reminiscent of Kingdom Hearts than 16 when we kind of get to that. But I would definitely recommend those two for like playing around and mucking with. Let's get back into this. So then that leads me to 16. This one is a kind of weird beast. Again, birthday gift, but the weirdness that kind of popped up with this is very Game of Thrones inspired, and it's again more of an action one, but it doesn't, I didn't have as much kind of freedom as I kind of had, or at least what I felt I had in 15. 16, definitely more linear. You don't really explore around a lot. Most of the side quests get kind of boring after a while in that they follow more of an MMO kind of style, where you go and do some kind of little thing and then you get like regurgitated by what's going on. Now granted, I like the characters and connected with them. Clive being forced into slavery and being fucked over by his mother and feeling that he had killed his brother Joshua. The whole thing with the icons, this being pretty much the Eidolons and the Dominants. People that can channel these powers, which leads to giant kind of kaiju monster fighting. My biggest kind of issue is also the implementation of QuickTime events. That if you want me to play it, let me play it. If you want me to watch it, let me watch it. Don't try and half it and be like, hey, try and do both at once. Sorry, I just had to deal with that one. I did like the overall story, the understanding of the crystals, Ultima, understanding of free will and creations. Again, very similar to Final Fantasy IX in that regard, whereas Clive is made and is supposed to be Ultima's vessel for it to pretty much take over the world and fucking destroy the humans. And Clive's like, fuck you, man. Fuck you. You created us, and then you just left us, and fuck you, man. It's like, I really kind of connected with it. Now, granted, there's more to it than that. we see them kind of destroying these crystals. I did like the whole Sid kind of aspect where Sid's this freedom fighter is like, we got to destroy these mother crystals because it's spreading the blight. And evidently the blight's more connected with these ancient aliens, Ultima, and, well, ancient beings, and Clive channeling the power of the gods to pretty much take his ass out, revive his brother from the confrontation, and that's the whole thing. Their relationship as siblings really kind of hit me as well. I did like that relationship, their understanding of that. My kind of issue was that I'd played Tales of Arise, and this had eerie similarities between it. Now, again, I'm not saying that this like copied it or ripped from it, but it's kind of weird that they had the same kind of aspects of like the slavery, these kind of tithing systems, utilizing these planets and peoples, the main character's element being a fire, and certain kind of shit as well. I'm not saying that it copied it or whatnot. I'm just like, that's a kind of strange coincidence that that happened. Again, I've played Tales of Arise before, and I enjoyed it. I had fun with it. And I enjoyed this and had fun with it as well. It's just, I wish that the combat system was a little bit better. Now, granted, I might not have just been utilizing it correctly, because I mainly tried to do kind of combos, but didn't understand really how to get them to be kind of better, so I'd just be doing lunges and certain kind of other things, and utilizing my icon powers as well as possible to kind of like get through it. Now, granted, the kaiju battles, I kind of had a better kind of thing because of the scale and the flashiness of the powers. But the main thing that really kept me going was the story. Clive trying to go through and save the world, what that kind of understood and meant, how he interacted with Jill, and how they both had horrendous emotional scarring and even actual physical scarring from their time as being utilized as slaves and everything. And what they kind of had to do with that and deal with their atonement and, of course, free will and trying to move on and atone and get redemption and everything. Dion was a very interesting character in that regard because of Ultima's machinations, pretty much having him accidentally kill a multitude of people. I don't know, like thousands of people on a rampage because he was the icon of Bahamut. And having to deal with that and what he was trying to do and trying to help people to kind of atone with it, that made him a very interesting character. There's a lot of kind of cool stuff kind of going on with here. And I enjoyed my time with it. Now, granted, that just means that there were kind of systems, like I wish the combat system got me a little bit better. I wish that the side quests had gameplay that was better. I liked the stories that we get because we get characters trying to get revenge, trying to protect the places that they live and love, and just fleshing out the world very well. It's just, okay, now I'm going to sit here for this cutscene, and sometimes it's just like reiterating stuff that I'm like, okay, could we kind of go a little bit faster here? But I would definitely recommend at least these three to kind of like go through and play. They really kind of connected with me. And the funny thing is, before I got through that final dungeon, I would have had probably Final Fantasy IV here. But because of how nutty it goes more towards the bottom of the list. So then I get to Final Fantasy VII. And that's one of the big dogs, one of the big honking ones that are kind of the big one. I mean, hell, they're doing remakes of it that have various different kind of people's opinions on them. Mainly because we're now introducing the convolution of Kingdom Hearts into this, when it's just like, if you just remade it and had better graphics or whatnot, or made it, yeah, people would have been fine with that. I was fine with what we had with Final Fantasy VII for me to play through on the PlayStation. And I get why people liked it. I liked learning about Cloud and Barret and Tifa and them trying to fight Shinra and Shinra just doing horrendous fucking shit. And the understanding of they are doing shit that is killing the planet. We have Sephiroth and these alien fucking things trying to destroy the world. We have to stop them. And learning about that and learning about the giant fucking Buster Sword and the big sword that like fucking Sephiroth has and Aerith and seeing Red and Vincent and all these different kind of characters and how they kind of work throughout the world. Again, I like that I played it where I played it and when I played it because I speed up combat, go through all these things. I mean, shit, the music, the graphics. I mean, like Cosmo Canyon. I love that fucking song. Like, it's just a little thing, but it just fucking hits. And learning about Sid, getting the airship, rolling around, the golden saucer, the chocobos and everything. It just works. I could understand why this would be at the top of people's Final Fantasy lists. My only thing gets into it of towards the end, it just kind of ends abruptly and then goes into the future. There's like, it's been going great and strong up into that point, and then it's like, ah, shit, because we see that we're trying to stop Sephiroth. We're trying to stop Meteor. I kind of viewed Aerith's death as more kind of a shock kind of value, and that more that it was done for kind of just shock out of nowhere, and that's just mainly my feeling for it. It's kind of hard to describe. It's more like, I felt like the whole moment felt the characters and all that, but I'm just like, this feels more that it was just done for more shock value, more than what they were trying to do, because then it kind of starts spinning a little bit, and they're like, we gotta fucking beat Sephiroth, and then we beat him, and then we just go into the future, and it's like, what the fuck? Okay, as the planet's pretty much healed and whatnot, I'm like, okay, I kind of get it, but it just seems kind of random to kind of end there. But I liked the turn-based, I liked the materia system. I really like the materia system because then you can level it up and like slot it in on different kind of people and everything. So you can like augment and change different kind of powers for people. I really liked handling that system. That was actually pretty goddamn cool. I'm like, yes. And that's going to become important later because the reasons I like Final Fantasy VII is the things that like how poorly implemented in Final Fantasy VIII things start going, because even though I have that kind of little kind of quibble for what kind of goes on at the end for Final Fantasy VII, the whole entire story for Final Fantasy VIII starts going holy hog ass fucking let me see here. But it's interesting to see all the different kind of themes of like dealing with the Earth, and then Shinra being like, "You're eco-terrorists." It's like, you're poisoning the water, you're poisoning the land, you're just doing shit that's like destroying everything. What other fucking choices have you left us? Like he wants to cast Meteor, and then pretty much become a god by absorbing the life stream. Yeah. We've got this Genova thing. It's nuts. It's sci-fi, fantasy, all kind of insanity stuff. Yeah, we go 500 years in the future. It's like, what the fuck? But that one I would definitely recommend because of learning all the different kind of characters, going through the different systems. Because it was kind of enjoyable. I liked, even though it kind of got convoluted with Cloud and Zack's memories and his whole kind of relationship with Sephiroth, it doesn't completely and utterly derail the story or the characters for me. And seeing Tifa and Barrett and Sid and everybody kind of deal with what's kind of going on with the planet, what Sephiroth's plans are doing, how they try to stop him and all that. Those are the compelling parts of the story and the narrative to kind of push it forward. It's like this deranged fucknut. And this corporation is trying to do this kind of stupid ass shit, messing with things that it's like, hey, shouldn't somebody stop you? Fuck you, man. It's like, no. It was just nice. I had a nice time with it. Nice understanding of kind of what's going on without it getting completely and utterly insane. Let's see here. So now we get to 12. 12's the odd one because this is around the time we had Final Fantasy XI, which was an MMO. And that one definitely informed this one. My biggest kind of knock onto it would be that it doesn't have turn-based, and it's more just an MMO kind of thing, and it really gets down into its design that becomes the kind of hit on it. I.e., you kind of set characters out to kind of do certain kind of things you do. It's more MMO-based, which is an odd kind of thing. I probably would have had kind of more to kind of be like against it with, but no, I mean, I liked the characters and the story of what was kind of going on. Let's see here. Got Vaughn. Avalis. Let's see. We got our empires here. Always got to have that. Dalmasca. Ravenastre. Ash. Princess of Damasca. Bosk. Disgraced Knight. Balthiar. Balthiar was interesting. Sky Pirate, who pilots his airship, the Strahl. Fran, who's a giant bunny lady. And Pinello, Van's childhood friend who accompanies him on journeys to keep an eye on him. And of course, this is more very much kind of Star Wars kind of esque. And it's kind of thing, even though there's a lot of different kind of like Star Wars stuff. We gotta defeat the evil empire. Let's see here. The brand. And of course, we've got crystals and magic kind of in effect. That pretty much was kind of the thing with Final Fantasy XVI of like magic and everything's kind of fucking up the world. And of course, at that one, we kind of get the in-between kind of thing that like Clive dies from everything kind of going on, and eventually it gets into the future. So his brother Joshua wrote about the War of the Icons, and people are like, oh, magic wasn't really worth it, doesn't exist anyway, leading that the Blight's kind of away. But it's like, you should watch out. People should still learn about this kind of stuff, otherwise they're doomed to repeat that shit. But like, seeing what's kind of going on in the war, of course, people being assholes, trying to get the reins of history back into man's hands. And then, of course, we see people being like, going back on adventures. Now, my biggest kind of beef is that it was very MMO-esque, which is like, oh, you just go here, you do this, you gather this kind of stuff up. Side quests weren't really that kind of memorable for me. Now, granted, it has been a while since I played certain ones of these, but I found it serviceable enough. It was a different kind of thing to kind of play through because I'm like, oh, okay, this is a kind of different take on Final Fantasy. I would still recommend it if you're like, hey, let's kind of go through the series and see what kind of goes on for it. But again, that's kind of why it's towards the bottom, because other ones stand out to me like Cloud, Noctis, Clive, Zidane. Ten is a weird one. I understand where it kind of goes. Titus getting up with Yuna, trying to defeat Sin and everything, and then learning that like he's a dream and all that from Xanarkin and all that. The thing is that I had such a weird thing of it where I rented it and it didn't just jive with me, that playing through it, I'm like, okay, and that's why I didn't like completely hate on it. But there are aspects I don't like Blitzball. I hate that I had to interact with it with Titus? I had the pronunciation down once, but Titus, I believe. I don't. And then Waka having to do it to get his ultimate weapon. It's like, motherfucker! and journeying around and doing what you kind of need to do to help her, Yuna kind of defeat Sin before continuing the pretty much cycle of all that. It's just, it felt kind of like Sixth Sense of trying to be like, gotcha, like, Tidus, he's a dream kind of thing, and he kind of disappears at the end. It's like, oh, come on. Okay. The wiki kind of explained that Jektons, the Xanarkin they hail from, are summoned entities akin to Aeons based on the original Xanarkin and its people. Which, it just kind of makes it a little bit more convoluted for me. The original Xanarkin battled Bevil in a Machina war, which the former was defeated. Became faith so they could use their memories of Xanarkin to create a new city in their image, removed from the reality of Spira. Leska, the first summoner to defeat Sin, tells the group that the final Aeon is created from the faith of one. Okay. After defeating Sin, the final Aeon kills the summoner and transforms into a new Sin, thus cause its cycle of rebirth to continue. Then, of course, we got Yevon. And then, of course, there's Seymour. You gotta send people from their death. It just gets really kind of weird. I'm like, it doesn't jive with me. I still like the characters and everything, but once you start getting into that kind of stuff, I'm just like, what? Okay, so these are kind of like, I don't mind those kind of metaphysical and different kind of physics kind of aspects and exploring those kind of things. That's kind of what Final Fantasy does, and it's a nice kind of core tenet. It just, its execution didn't fit for me. Now granted, I still consider this one kind of like, if I ever do a true kind of big-ass breakdown, this is my middle. This is what I believe, like, this is a Final Fantasy that I don't love, that I don't hate, that I don't think is bad at all, but just isn't one that I kind of work with. The characters are interesting of Wooloo, Wakka, Riku, Auron, Tidus, Yuna. Who the fuck was the Panther? Kimahri. And of course, Tidus disappeared at the end, but then pops up in a post-credit scene, and then we get 10-2. I didn't play 10-2. Even though it's in this, and with the other thing, I'm like, I didn't have an interest in it at that point, because I'm like, I'm not interested that much in it, even though I'm interested in the characters and the world. It just didn't hit with me. And that's fine. I don't think it's a horrible game. There's just aspects of it that screwed with me, and I'm like, I'm not that much into it. So, I'm good. Let's see here. Now we start getting into it. 4 moon people. Granted, we've got other kind of stuff as well. This is interesting because we learned that you are Cecil, and you're actually a Dark Knight with another Dark Knight, Kane, and you have to figure out kind of what's going on, and you actually start as one of the bad guys before you start to kind of redeem yourself and become the Paladin and learn that you're part of this moon race and you have to deal with this other kind of crazy-ass shit. Zemus, and then Zeramus, and it's just like, what? Fuck this. I liked the story of this, but then this evidently is a crazy-ass version. Augments, I felt, were kind of convoluted of kind of dealing with it, not like the materia system in Final Fantasy VII. Just trying to get that kind of stuff is just nuts. Because I came back to replaying this and I'm like, no, oh god, no. And it really kind of takes it into you because I had to try and like run from so many battles because I just wanted to finish it. And I finished it in a down and dirty way. I just let Cain have jump, darkness, and focus, and I got him the Holy Lance, and I just had him just fucking thunder take out the one dude because I didn't want to fucking deal with trying to essentially grind out other mini boss battles to try and get my party up enough and get certain kind of weapons, especially because of how random the random encounters are, because otherwise you'd have to stand outside of the save room and just hope to god you go, and hope you get back in before you save. It's mainly the final dungeon that fucking tanks this down towards the final end for me because it is not well designed. I've had other kind of final run rooms with other kind of things that worked out better than it. But the characters are kind of weird, crazy, and interesting. Cecil trying to redeem himself, Cain as well, Ryda with trying to being her Eidolon summoner kind of bit. A fucking Prince Ninja? That's fucking awesome. Rosa with her healing, these kids, old moon dude. You find out that you fought your brother, who looks kind of Vader-ish, is actually a good guy, but he's just been under spells and shit. Before everybody kind of gets their usual typical kind of fairy tale happy ending at the end. So this one, I don't know. There might be other versions that are better, and that could be down to me playing this version, which is why I had such a fucked up time towards the end of it, where it just completely taints it for me. Because up until that point, I probably would have put that in with one of my top ones of Final Fantasy because of the story going through with these characters, learning about the world, and trying to get this kind of redemption thing kind of going. And it's just like, hey, fuck you. I don't mind a challenge, but when it's done to a point where there's only kind of like 2 main save points where you gotta then try and do your whole kind of grind thing and then probably back out and go from the moon to some other kind of place to get gear and supplies and everything, it was just like, oh god, just let me be lucky enough to kind of get through this, please. Oh my god, no. Oh, that was nuts. So we then get to Final Fantasy VIII. This was the one that I probably would have put at the bottom of my list before. Now, if we're talking mainline entries, yes, it is the bottom of my list because, oh god, it has gameplay problems. Like, you got to deal with a card system, and it's not as intuitive with the kind of materia kind of similarities with Final Fantasy VII. The story and characters really did not bring me in, even though we've got Squall, who's got like a gun blade. Looks cool, but we get into fucked up, stupid time traveling bullshit that just really doesn't make any sense. And odd. It just, I don't know what it was trying to say. It's, again, an interesting one that's got kind of modern kind of things going on with it, kind of like 7, kind of like 15, but it's just, oh my god, we've got these Balam Garden, these child soldiers, because I rented this from Hollywood Video as well, but I got stuck in like trying to run away from the mecha spider in the beginning. I'm like, I don't know what the fuck's kind of going on here. They try to assassinate someone. Cypher's just a dick. We get time travel to try and stop and alter history. We've got to deal with Sorceress Adele. Evidently, you get amnesia due to the Guardian forces, except Irvine. Gotta go after that corrupt sorceress. an unwilling host for Ultimecia, who planned to use Elone to help achieve time compression. Whatever the fuck that means. We get an orbital prison for some fucked up reason. And then you defeat her before time compression's fully done. It just was like, oh my god, just even looking at the Wikipedia thing, the main thing is trying to do these cards and trying to do leveling stuff and getting the kind of powers that you need. It wasn't fun to me. In Final Fantasy VII and all the other ones, even the ones that had issues that I had issues with, except for Type 0, I was okay with getting certain kind of powers and everything, but this one, it just... I usually need... If one thing doesn't work, the other thing needs to pick up the slack to kind of get me through to doing, like, being able to get through a game. If I don't have the story and the characters, I need the system to work out for me to get me through it. If the systems don't work out for me, I need the story and the characters to do that. If both are going batshit fucking nuts, I'm not having a good time and I'm just sitting there like, this kind of gets into the realm of, like, Deadly Premonition, where, okay, there's some interesting aspects here, but it's... I'm having to fight the fucking system, and I'm not having a good time with trying to figure out what's going on and getting into this stuff. When you've got weird-ass time travel, and just characters that are like, no, Squall, why are you acting like a douche? Like, fuck off, please. Now I gotta do this kind of fucking card system. At least with, like, The Witcher, I didn't have to utilize the card system to kind of get certain kind of things to get my shit going. It's like, no. And then having to juggle around the different kind of guardian forces. It didn't feel like the materia system. And it was just like... Now granted, that doesn't mean that everything needs to work as the materia system in Final Fantasy VII. It's just a system that worked well. And it's like, even though each one kind of works out to a point where they try and do Final Fantasy in their own kind of way, which is cool. I kind of like that. It's kind of what draws me to the series. That then leads to certain kind of instances where things do not fucking work, and that didn't work for me. And I wouldn't really recommend Final Fantasy VIII for it. Now, if you like it, that's fine. If you like any of these and they're not like mine or in like my top, I totally get that. Like what you like. It's just 8 was really not for me, and I'm just like, oh god, here we go. So, that's kind of like my whole thing. I could go into better kind of depth with certain kind of ones, but I think I've hit on the kind of main points with them. Certain ones, the systems and the stories and the characters just worked out so well for me. That's like 9, and then 15 and 16. Yeah, 7, definitely. But then other ones, just like, oh god, like, even though I liked 12, I'm like, this is more of an MMO without being an MMO, and it's just like, I'd rather have the kind of stories from 16 at this point in these, rather than, oh, this is just the MMO kind of fetch quest kind of stuff. And 10, just a comparable JRPG to me. I don't hate it, I don't love it. 4 and 8, I would not go back to them really that much unless I wanted to do it for a certain kind of reason. And I pretty much collected 8 to have, because I was pretty much rebuilding certain kind of ones on my PC because I'm shifting over to PC. So now I'm kind of ready for whatever kind of comes next. We'll see how Square Enix does Final Fantasy 16 on PC at a certain kind of point, see where the rest of the Final Fantasies go. I might check out the 7 Rebirth kind of thing at a certain kind of point, but mainly when it's I just hate that they took a game and sliced it into threes, into 3 parts, and that we have to wait for it to be combined together. So we'll see how that kind of works out, even on the fact that it's kind of going completely and utterly nuts with the story as well, even though I thought it was pretty much comparable of what was going to go on. But granted, that's what happens with certain remakes or reimaginings or remixes. You kind of change it up to kind of see what's kind of happening, even though what I'm in here is like, no, please no, God no, fuck no. Certain kind of other ones you could get away with that, like Resident Evil 5 and 6. You need to retool those kind of ones. Like, there are certain kind of ones where you could just remaster, i.e. do as little as possible and put it out and be like, alright, cool. It's upgraded to a point where you can pretty much play it on modern systems, have modern graphics, you're good to go. Whereas in other cases, you actually really have to fix some shit because it's like, even the basic fucking system is not working. So yeah, I would still recommend a lot of Final Fantasy series, and I would be open to other kind of ones, but I heard about the linearity of 13, and I was just like, I'm kind of okay. And these other kind of ones kind of got my interest a little bit better, and it will be interesting to see what Square Enix kind of goes off for next, because I have heard weird fucking rumblings of what's kind of been going on with 16. I mean, I liked it. I just can't believe that we're at the point now that you could sell millions and still not hit what your break-even points needed. That's like, we'll have to see how that works out. But these are my opinions on the Final Fantasy series. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked them, if you didn't like them, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also, like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.